Then we have collegno, which is playing the violin with the back of your bow, the wooden part of the bow, and hitting it on the string, which is resulting in a very snappy sound. That's all of a sudden a very different articulation and very different expression that you get from playing the string instruments in that way. Then we have more pizzicatos. All of these articulations are going to give you different colors to play with when it comes to creating orchestral music. And I think people are leaving out a lot of ways to express themselves and to make music that stands out by just sticking to the most basic articulations. So what I recommend that you do is go through all these articulations in your libraries that you very rarely use and try to see, okay, maybe this can fit for this kind of situation. Maybe this could fit for that kind of situation. And sometimes you'll find these little happy accidents that can really take your new song to the next level. Listen to how lush and beautiful that is. So start exploring and getting more familiar with different articulations than just sustain and staccatos. Now let's move over to the next issue that I often see. And I've just taken a sustained string patch from CSS here, and I've just played a little 4-chord progression, and it sounds like this. So this in itself is the issue I want to talk about. First of all, way too many people like record their harmonic parts in just root position and just play it into some kind of ensemble patch, and that's their harmony. And the issue with this is not how an orchestra works whatsoever. And this sounds literally like someone is playing chords on a synth with a string sound, which is what's happening. But there's so many ways to fix that. And one place to start is to work on the voicing. So each of these notes are going the shortest way to the next chord, which I'm explaining in the chord voicing lecture. And you can just move these like an octave down so they're closer to each other. All of a sudden it sounds more like this. Or you just work on it in the beginning. But this is like the way if you're not really sure how to use inversions, you can do it in root position and then take certain notes an octave down until they're quite close to each other. And here I've just done it from scratch and made sure that the voicing is, going the closest way to the next chord. But it still isn't that great because we're still just recording something into a string sustain patch, which might be good or is usually good when you're just sketching or playing around with ideas. But if this is your end result, it's not going to sound extremely realistic. It is good for sketching and playing around, but I would not leave things like this and hit bounce. There's one thing that you can do that's just immediately going to make it sound a lot better, and that is simply taking each of these 4 voices and splitting them out into individual tracks. Simply giving the lowest one to the bass, the next one to a cello, the next one to a viola or violin, and the top one to another violin. I just used 4 tracks here because there's 4 notes in this chord progression. And by just doing that, first check out the MIDI of this one, and then we check the MIDI on this. It is identical. So I've literally just transferred this MIDI onto 4 separate tracks and listen to the difference. reason this is so important is that a string section consists of many different human beings that each are playing in their own group of instrumentalists. For example, the cellos, the violin 1, violin 2, the violas, and the basses. They're not a string patch. They're individual people playing individual parts, and just recording them slightly differently and with their own phrasing is going to emulate this way closer than a sustained patch ever can. So those are two things that I want you to focus on as well. Work on the chord voicing and then make sure you split each voice into their own track with legato or whatever articulation you want to be using. So let's quickly recap. The first issue I want you to work on is where it is sensible to do so, try to switch up the articulations you're using to emulate a real player. This can go for legato parts or more short string articulation parts. The next thing is focus on simplicity when it comes to string arranging. Sometimes all you need for a melody to stand out more is not to add more elements into it, but simply reinforce it over octaves in the strings to get a large, lush sound. The next thing is work on getting more familiar with the different articulations you have available in your different libraries and use them, because it's going to give you more creative expression and, really take your tracks to the next level and make it sound more professional and like you're actually understanding the orchestra you're playing or writing for. Final thing, work on your chord voicing and split things up to sections that emulate the real orchestra a bit closer. That's the basic string tips I have for you right now, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So that are some of the most fundamental but really effective string tips I have for you guys. I'll see you in the next video.